Hi, I'm Mick and this is Hammer the Backlog. Over the last year and a half, I've been blogging and vlogging about my ongoing project of painting my 25 years of unpainted Warhammer Fantasy and 40k minis before the inevitable heat death of the universe. You can check out some of the videos in the links below. This all started because of this box set, Warhammer 5th edition, released in 1996. I picked up my copy for my 16th birthday in 1998 and promptly never painted it. I'd been dragging the half-assembled, half-broken models around with me for years before I decided in summer 2022 to get the set done. The set famously came with a number of cardstock buildings. The charm of these things has in no way diminished over the last 27 years. The tower, house and shed were all assembled before being stuck onto plastic card bases, which were then coated in sand, or modern, weird, organic sand substitute anyway. Then they were painted green, as was the tradition of the time. But a 90s battlefield is nothing without woods. I initially looked for the exact trees that appeared in Games Workshop catalogues and books at the time, but then I found out that model tree technology hasn't moved on a huge amount since 1998, meaning that I could pop into my local model train shop and pick up trees that fit the 90s vibe perfectly. These were also stuck onto plastic card, sanded and painted green just like the buildings. Throw in a nice 90s green tablecloth and we have an era-appropriate battlefield. Smooth. I got the ball rolling with the Bretonnians. These classic models were painted mostly with modern contrast paints and highlights. Over the course of 3 months, I painted 2 units of Bretonnian bowmen and 12 knights, each with their own unique heraldry and colour scheme. A couple of repairs were needed along the way, mostly to broken lances, which led to a unit champion with a sword and this banner bearer with the banner top made from a spare knight's head. Next up were the Lizardmen. The 5th edition box set was pretty much their debut, and the box cover definitely made it seem like they were mindless, gross, gribbly monsters that the noble knights were defending against. For my lizards, I wanted to go with colour schemes fairly close to the legendary box cover by Mark Gibbons. I did 1 unit of skinks up in this iconic, but not terribly common, orange colour scheme. The others are the classic green scheme of Street Fighter II character Blanka. For the Saurus warriors, just like with the skinks, I wanted to match the box art and have a little variety, so I did 1 set in a dark green and 1 in a lighter green. They look nice in 2 separate groups, or all mushed together into 1 great big green unit. With the full box set done, I knew I wasn't quite finished with my newly found 5th edition obsession. Unlike a lot of the newer sets, and quite a few of the older ones, the 5th edition box set did not come with a story for the forces in the box, never mind some fun scenarios to fight while you learned the game. Luckily, legendary games designer Thomas Pirnen wrote a scenario using only the forces in the box for White Dwarf 205. Called the Rat of Tlaxtlan, this small battle makes up for the lizards in the box being much less powerful by giving them all command units and having the Bretonnian Knights start the game off the table. If my ambition was to play the Rat of Tlaxtlan battle report, I knew I would have to do 3 things. Thing 1 was to collect and paint command squads for the lizards. A combination of eBaying, local Warhammer swap groups, and a very nice gift from my mate Emil meant that after a few weeks, all of the lizards had command groups. Thing 2 was to find someone else to play. A nice combination of bribery and trickery convinced my friend Dr. Coach Jim to learn to play a 30-year-old game with me. Thing 3 was to learn how to play. Luckily, the box set did come with a getting started booklet, which me and Jim played through, the results of which are presented here for your delectation. Encounter 1, Bowman vs. Skink. In the first encounter, we learned about movement, charging, hitting, wounding and saving by having a single skink face off against a Bretonnian bowman. We started by placing them 20 inches apart, with Jim controlling the gross and slimy skink and me guiding the noble and heroic bowman. It was the Bretonnian bowman's turn first. Men are allowed to move 4 inches a turn, so the Bretonnian moved 4 inches towards the skink. Once the Bretonnian moved, he shot his longbow. The longbow has a range of 30 inches, so we measured the distance to make sure he was within range. The models were 16 inches apart. As the Bretonnian was in range, he was able to shoot. In most situations, the Bretonnian would need a 4 to hit based on his BS or ballistic skill. However, in this case, he had moved and the skink was more than half his weapon's range away, so he had a -1 for moving and a -1 for long range shot. That meant he needed a 6 to hit. I rolled the dice and scored a 6, a lucky hit for the Bretonnian bowman. Since the bowman hit, we had to roll again to determine whether the arrow slays the skink. Since the bow's strength of 3 is higher than the skink's toughness of just 2, a 3 or greater would kill the skink. I rolled again, rolling another 6. The skink is in serious trouble. The skink has only one chance to survive. He has hard, scaly skin, so it's possible the arrow may glance aside. The skink's save is a 6+, meaning Jim will need to roll a 6 for the skink to survive. Miraculously, the first 3 rolls in our very first time ever playing Warhammer were 3 6s in a row, and the skink survived into round 2. It's now the skink's turn. Skinks are allowed to move 6 inches, so the skink moves 6 inches towards the Bretonnian. The short bow has a range of 16 inches, so we already know he's within range. Having moved 6 inches, they are now 10 inches apart. As the skink's within range, he takes a shot. He'll also require a 6 to hit. Normally, he would need a 4, -1 for moving, and -1 for being over half the range of his short bow. Jim rolls, and rolls a 3. The skink's arrow misses. As there's no combat, that's the end of the turn. We move on to the Bretonnian's second turn. The Bretonnian again moves his full distance forward 4 inches. As the Bretonnian has moved, he will need a 5 to hit. I roll and roll a 2. The Bretonnian's arrow misses. In the Lizard Man turn 2, the skink is still alive. He's now only 6 inches away, which is close enough to charge. Jim declares a charge, and the tiny little Lizard Man runs into hand-to-hand combat. Models can charge up to twice their move distance, so his range for this charge was 12 inches. The skink can't shoot because he's charged, but he can attack the Bretonnian bowman with his dagger. Jim rolls a 4, meaning the Lizard Man hits. Now we need to compare the skink's strength of 3 against the Bretonnian's toughness of 3. That means Jim will need to roll a 4 to kill the Bretonnian. He rolls a 2, and the Bretonnian survives. Now it's my Bretonnian's chance to strike back. As the Bretonnian is a slightly better fighter than the Lizard Man, he needs a 3 to hit. I roll a 4. The Bretonnian strikes the Lizard Man with his dagger. Once again, the Bretonnian's strength is higher than the skink's toughness, so he needs only a 3 to wound. I roll again, hitting with a 4. The Lizard Man has one chance left to save himself. He needs a 6 to save. He rolls a 2, and the little Lizard Man is slain. Encounter 2, Saurus versus Bowmen. In the second encounter, we used 10 Bretonnian bowmen and 5 Saurus warriors to learn about combat, especially close combat resolution. In this encounter, the Lizard Men went first. As the Saurus warriors have no ranged weapons, they don't shoot, and they move 4 inches towards the Bretonnians. In the Bretonnians' turn, the men decide not to move. They'd sooner stand where they are and shoot at the advancing Lizard Men. The Sauruses are 8 inches away, so they're within range of the Bretonnians' longbows. I take 10 dice, 1 dice for each man shooting, and roll them all at once. Any dice which scores 4 or better have hit. This is a good roll, 7 hits. I take all 7 of the hits and roll them again to see whether their targets are slain. Any dice which scores 5 or more will kill a Saurus, unless the Saurus can roll its saving throw. Sadly for the noble Bretonnians, only 1 wound goes through. Jim rolled a dice for the Saurus that would otherwise be slain, and if he scores a 4, 5 or 6, the Saurus is saved by its scaly skin and shield. Jim rolls a 6, saving the Saurus warrior and rendering the Bretonnians' first volley of arrows completely ineffectual. It's now Lizardmen turn 2. The Saurus warriors are only 8 inches away from the Bretonnians, which is close enough to charge. Sauruses normally move 4 and can charge 8, up to double the distance. The Sauruses charge the men. In the case of this example, there is no stand and shoot reaction, so the Bretonnians stand slack-jawed as the Lizardmen charge. In hand-to-hand fighting, both sides fight, and the side that charged that turn always goes first. This is important because models which are removed as dead can't fight back. The Sauruses attack first. Sauruses attack twice, once with their weapons and once with their vicious teeth. Jim rolls 2 dice for each Saurus that's fighting. That's 10 dice. Any dice which scores a 4 or more has hit. That's 5 hits. Jim now rolls a dice for each hit scored, and any which scores 3 or more kills a Bretonnian. That's 4 kills. We remove the dead Bretonnians from amongst those facing the Lizardmen and place the casualties behind the unit. The Bretonnians can now fight back. It's still the Lizardmen's turn, but as you'll recall, both sides fight in hand-to-hand combat. In order for a Bretonnian to fight, his base must be touching a Saurus base. Also, any models removed as casualties cannot fight back. That means 3 Bretonnians are striking back. I roll a dice for each of the 3 Bretonnians. I need a 4 or more to hit, which I'll then need to turn into a 5 to convert into a kill. 3 Bretonnians fight back, scoring 1 hit. I roll a 2 on the hit, meaning none of the Lizardmen are wounded. Both sides have now finished fighting, and we have to determine who's won. The winner is the side that has caused the most casualties. In this case, the Lizardmen has caused 4 casualties to the Bretonnians 0, so they win 4-0. Now the Bretonnians must take a break test to see if they continue to fight or run away. To take a break test, I roll 2 dice, add the scores together, and add the difference in casualties. If the total score is more than 7, the Bretonnians' leadership, the Bretonnians are broken. They turn their heels and run. I roll a 6 and a 5. Including the 4 casualties, that's a 15 versus 7 leadership. The Bretonnians turn heel and run, and the Lizardmen win encounter 2. Since that's everything from the Getting Started book, the next thing for me and Jim to do was to play the Rat of Thlaxtlan battle report. If that's something you're interested in seeing, please subscribe to the channel. The video will be live within the next week. Thank you very much for watching this little video. I hope it triggered some nostalgia in you and maybe generated some interest in digging out your old copy of classic board or war games and giving them a play. Good eggs.